The Commission for Gender Equality says there's been no evidence of systematic discrimination against any citizen based on gender during the election period. The Commission fielded a team of about 50 gender-diverse election observers across the country. Now, some of the focus areas include rural villages, farming communities, informal settlements, as well as big cities in all of the 9 provinces. For more on this, I'm joined by Advocate Nthabiseng Sepanya-Mogale. Advocate, good to have you with us today. It's quite interesting that this would be an aspect of elections that one would actually focus on. I'd like to find out from you why you did this, and if there ever was a time when gender discrimination was actually key and observed during election periods.
Thank you for having us, Tammy. The CGE has always monitored elections and looked at exactly this issue of gender parity and voting patterns in relation to gender dynamics. So we've always looked at it. It's not the first time, even 2019 and before. But I think why we are looking at it, we also want to see if both men and women of this country are exercising their right of suffrage as it is enshrined in our constitution, and if so, how, and if not, why not?
I guess that was the main question that I was asking. If that ever really was an issue, specifically in South Africa, with us being a relatively new democracy.
Yes, it is an issue, although it is a hidden issue, or rather an issue that is not deliberate, in the sense that when you look at what happens on voting days, for example, you are expected to be there, and it's a holiday. Yet you still have domestic workers who are expected to come to work and work. Secondly, it is a holiday, but retail stores would naturally open, even if it's for half day or whatever, but they open, and the majority of people who are working in retail stores are your women and young people. So that actually impacts on their right to vote and their right to exercise this. For example, if you knock off at 5, you are bound to get home at 6, and when you get home at 6, the queues, and considering the challenges that we had this time, where people were told, no, this is not your voting station, go to voting station so and so. At what time do you get to get there? Would it be safe for you now to try another voting station, etc.? So these are some of the things that we do not consider. But again, when you look at the fact that domestic workers tend to rely on their employers on that day for transportation to their voting stations. Number one, a lot of them are registered at their place of employment, which in itself is a problem, because they're supposed to be registered at their place of residence where they know the kind of changes and impact they want. However, in South Africa, you find a majority are registered with their employer, and they rely on the employer for transport to go to the voting stations. That in itself is a tacit, undue pressure to vote in favor of what the employer suggests. It does not have to be outright. The employer influences and suggests. That is why I say undue influence, the underlying influence of saying, you know what, you have this job because of this and this party. Do me that favor. So it is a critical issue.
As far as the number and the percentage of men versus women who registered for the elections, women were way above 50%. They were at 55.17%, and men were at 44.83%. Have you been able to collate the percentage of women who actually did arrive to vote, or is it still early days for that?
It is still a bit early, Tammy, but in the next few days we will be getting an exact figure on that. But what we saw at the voting stations that we're monitoring was exactly that pattern, where there were more women than men coming forward. So it actually is showing that the less the impediments that are put before women, the better for them to exercise. They are more keen than men.
There are also some conditions and situations that are quite specific to women, like pregnancy, for example. Do you play a role in monitoring, for example, how pregnant women are treated when they do go and vote?
Yes, we do. Our monitoring tool covers women generally with children. It covers parents with children, both men and women with children. It covers women who are pregnant. It covers disabled people. It covers the aged. So we do monitor that. And we found that the IEC was quite clued up and ready and geared up with regards to that. Pregnant women went straight to the front of the queue. The aged went straight to the front of the queue. Disabled people went straight to the front of the queue. The only hurdle that we picked up was that the special voting process failed a few of the agent, and they had to wake up that morning to go to the voting stations. But they were treated with VIP treatment, went straight to the front of the queues. In fact, we had one or two people who the presiding officers at the station where I was actually called people to come out to the car because this was a disabled person who it was going to be a mission to get them out of their car. And they called all the party representatives and this and that. There's a box that's covered that they had put the ballot box in there. They just helped out, and it was proper and done with the proper accountability, with everybody watching but giving the requisite privacy.
Our focus has largely been now on the electorate. Let's look at the candidates from the various political parties. How did gender representation fare on that front?
It didn't fare well. I must say we are seeing only the African National Congress at this point being the leading party that is consciously taking the issue of gender parity seriously. We are also seeing again being the same party that takes the issue of youth coming forward to be political representatives. All the other parties are actually lagging far, far, far behind. And we actually are saying we need those women in those communities to start demanding from the parties that they have voted to say, what about us? What about our young people? What about the succession arrangement that you have in the party that we have voted you into?
Do you believe that the women candidates that were fielded enjoy the same gravitas as the male candidates?
I don't think so, because if you look at the ceiling of the women, it's much lower. We still have yet to have a woman president. But having said that, I must hasten to say, we as women want quality women leaders. We should not have tokenism in the name of gender parity. And there is no doubt that there are capable and able women out there who can become leaders, but it still has not yet happened. And if this has not yet happened in some of the big parties, what about the other smaller parties? And the issue, I think, around South Africa is that a lot of participation in politics has been about job opportunities, business opportunities, and all other opportunities except public service. So maybe if we put it properly that it's public service, the good women out there will emerge.
Do women vote for women?
We are not sure, because unfortunately in this country, or fortunately, it's actually a private vote. It's a secret vote. It's a secret ballot. We do not know. But one of the ways that women can ensure that they vote women is to actually see them as a strong voting bloc rather than as a strong support bloc. Because one of the challenges that we have in South Africa is that a lot of the women formations see themselves as almost like kingmakers, and therefore support, rather than actually saying, no, we're able and capable, we would like to have this candidate, we would like to have that candidate, and put it properly in such a way that it's not about being lobbied. It's about what we as the women want and think will work best for us to achieve gender equality.
And perhaps the same question with regards to men. Do men generally see women as a strong voting bloc, as opposed to, as you put it, a supporter bloc?
No, they do not. And why I say they do not is because if that was the case, at all instances, 365 days of the year, women's issues would be national issues. However, women's issues tend to become issues around elections, when there is a tragedy of a woman being raped and killed, when somebody's husband has killed them, when a child has drowned, etc. So women's issues continue to be at the periphery, and only based on a tragedy or a particular amplified issue do we see those issues getting to the center of the table. So the men still do not take the women's role and the women's strength in voting seriously.
The next elections, which are national elections, are coming up in 2024. What do you believe needs to be done in order to ensure greater women representation, both from the electorate side as well as from candidacy, and perhaps even projecting to the next upcoming local government elections when they do happen?
Number one, a holiday that gets declared has got to be observed. Retail stores, domestic workers, employers, etc. We need to ask ourselves, if we feel I cannot do without this woman who is helping me with my children when I go and vote, what about them? We need to ask ourselves that. Secondly, we actually need to say, why must they register here where they work instead of registering where they live? Because that is where the impact, that is where their lived experience is felt. Why are they registering here? It is usually for the convenience of the employer rather than their convenience. The other thing is, if it is a holiday like the one we had now where the following day we work, they still need to observe the holiday so that that domestic worker can go with their friend to go and vote rather than with their madam in employment uniform, because almost all the ones that I saw were in uniform with the madam. It is unfair. It is undue pressure. It is something that we in South Africa need to highlight. The unions need to come out fighting. Domestic worker unions in particular need to nip this in the bud. We are having a situation where a big chunk, and that chunk, you must remember, Tammy, once you're talking domestic worker, you're talking woman, you're talking black woman. So a big chunk of black women in this country are being impeded from exercising a right that is enshrined in our constitution.
Well, thank you very much, Advocate Nthabiseng Sepanya-Mogale, for that recap of the work that you've done focusing on women during these elections. Thank you for your time.